With more than 240 kilometres of shoreline, a plethora of unspoiled beaches, warm, temperate climate and an abundance of native flora and fauna, Sydney Harbour is a place of stunning beauty. And Circular Quay is the front door to the City of Sydney. Flanked on one side by the famous Sydney Harbour Bridge and on the other by the beautiful Sydney Opera House, Circular Quay attracts more than 10 million visitors every year. And I'm here to see how great placemaking has contributed to one of the world's best waterfront cities. One of the key planning challenges in managing this place is how to balance the needs of local people, business and tourism, whilst developing a vision for the constant renewal that goes on here. Graham Yarn, who is the Director of City Planning, Development and Transport at the City of Sydney Council, explains.
Circular Quay has been the birthplace of modern Australia, and it's the celebration place of modern Australia. And of course, over time it has been transformed from a mercantile, busy port city with really a polluted edge, like most maritime cities, to gradually from the 1990s becoming more pedestrianised, more accessible, till today, where it's the place for holding, as I said, celebrations. Great waterfront cities kind of fall into three groups. The big residential city behind the beach, like Miami or Rio or the Gold Coast.
Yes.
The great historic cities, which are always up rivers, like Paris or London, or the great harbour city, like Singapore or Hong Kong or New York. And some of those have suffered from being hemmed in by freeways or railways around their water's edge. I think compared to those, Sydney's unique in that it's got a parkland that comes to the waterfront, a small frontage of contemporary CBD with a historic precinct, and it faces north into the winter sun. So at an intimate scale and at city scale, we're carving out public space, essentially to make connections and to create places where people can just dwell and enjoy the city.
Graham, we're going to see beautiful Quay Quarter Tower. What has that added to the space?
Well, it's one of the first responses to that vision of unlocking the difficult parts of the CBD. It's got a landmark tower which focuses on the users, the tenants, the employees. It's got a public space on a podium with great public art by Oliver Eliasson. And then of course over the road you've got a different scale of different materials creating a mixed use kind of residential development that is meant to look like it was always there. If that had not been achieved, that would be a difficult project to proceed with, but it was achieved and it has been executed very well, and I'm very pleased to see it come to fruition.
Inside Quay Quarter Tower, visitors are greeted by generous, striking interiors inspired by Australian nature and designed by London-based Tom Dixon. And I've come here to meet Murray Middleton, who is Head of Development for AMP Capital.
One of the important things with our approach was firstly understanding and respecting what we had, the key heritage elements, the key character elements. And that meant reinvigorating the heritage assets. It meant creating some new lanes and creating the opportunities for a diverse amenity across the two city blocks. In terms of how we created the design concept across the two city blocks, it was a true partnership between ourselves and the city. We went through two design competitions, design process. The international competition enabled us to choose 3XN, which we did. Clearly you can see it now, the very diverse and dramatic form of Quay Quarter Tower, like no other in the city. And at the same time, we went through a national process to select 4 emerging architects to do the buildings within the Loftus Lanes precinct. And what an amazing outcome that's turned out to be. Again, very different to Quay Quarter Tower, but that's what we wanted to achieve. We wanted to have that variety and diversity across the two city blocks, engendering that really strong sense of belonging in this historic part of Sydney.
The Quay Quarter Tower was designed by world-leading Danish architects 3XN, whose vision of a vertical urban village and a humanised skyscraper has resulted in one of Asia-Pacific's most innovative buildings. The design team was led by Kim Herforth Nielsen.
The first Danish architect working in Sydney was Jørgen Utzon, and we were the second one if we were successful. So we wanted to do something that could play up to the Sydney Opera House. We had to do something special that was in our DNA. And we thought in the same way, we're not going to do just an extruded tower, not a square building. We want to do something that is sculptural, that does something to the skyline. We want to take all the advantages of a low building into a tall building. So we came up with this idea fairly early in the process about doing what we called a vertical village, stacking one building on top of the other. Another thing that was a challenge was that we have the other smaller building in front of it, and that was an obstacle with views. So we came up with the idea about turning the different elements in different directions so they didn't look straight into the building in front of it. In the lower parts you have one view, higher parts when you're free of the building in front of you have another view. So that is why it's turning the way it's turning. So there's special views from every height in the building. And I think people will want to enter the building because it is an attractor in itself. It says, come on in, discover what this is all about. And that was our ideas about the design as well.
.3XN partner Fred Holt has worked with Kim on the design of Quay Quarter for the past 8 years. And for him, it's Australia's most innovative and most important sustainability project.
We like to talk about 3 levels of sustainability with the design. There's the social sustainability, which is focusing on that user experience. We like to say we've humanized the high-rise. Yeah. We've created a social spine that runs vertically on the northern face of the building, taking advantage of these great views through deep cuts into the floor plate, and also increase the daylight. So I'd hope that when someone that appreciates architecture or doesn't appreciate architecture actually sees that the building's designed around their experience, whether you're a visitor or a daily user. We have an urban sustainability or urban regeneration as well. By reinvigorating this particular precinct through this tower, we've leveraged the infrastructure that was already around. So from a client point of view, developer point of view, they're not making a huge investment. Yeah. And we're maintaining and reusing essentially a lot of the infrastructure, which lowers carbon. And the environmental sustainability, you can see one of the more salient features of the tower is its facade. There's a solar shade that blocks 30% of the solar radiance, which means your mechanical loads are lower. Yeah. Your floor plate's more efficient. You don't need blinds for thermal protection. But where the real innovation and environmental sustainability comes in is upcycling the existing tower. So we've sliced off a third of the building, yes, and then grafted on another 1,200 square meters of floor plate, so doubling the overall size, saving 98% of the existing core, 65% of the existing structure. So from an innovative sustainability point of view, it's the upcycling that really stands out, I think, with this building.
Doing anything in a new way carries risk, and Quay Quarter Tower is the first large-scale adaptive reuse development in Australia. What I find fascinating is how it happened in such a premium location. I spoke with Kylie O'Connor about risk and return.
We were sort of looking at this from the perspective of obviously our tenant customers in terms of the type of space that we were delivering, the floor plates, the abundance of natural light, and making sure that we could deliver a product that those companies could then attract and retain staff. We had a decision whether to refurb the existing building and leave it as it was, or undertake a major redevelopment. We felt, and the investors supported this decision, that owning a state-of-the-art premium grade asset was going to be a better outcome for them.
And I guess with those long-term hold investors, the sustainability qualifications would really count in favour as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that everyone is desiring, our investors, tenant customers, the community, council, high sustainability credentials across the board. You know, it was a risk and a leap of faith, but it's well and truly paid off. And creating something like we have today, the most beautiful building in the world.
When buildings are reused rather than demolished, developers can reduce CO2 emissions, the amount of waste going to landfills, consumption of raw materials, and deliver better commercial outcomes for their stakeholders. It's called adaptive reuse and is one of the many groundbreaking sustainability innovations that the development team at Quay Quarter Tower have used to reduce carbon emissions and reduce construction time. Brian Donnelly and Andrew Daniel led the development and construction teams.
This industry is responsible for about 40% of all emissions through both the actual built phase and the operational phase. And through a lot of projections, they're expecting a city this size of New York to be built every month for the next 40 years.
Wow.
So I think that in itself highlights the significance of taking a really strong approach to sustainability in the built environment. The more we got into it, the more interesting it became, because obviously through the retention of the existing structure, we were able to save around about 12 months off the overall construction program, which for a building of this size is considerable. And the environmental benefits associated with that, 12,000 tonnes of carbon emissions saved through construction, which is really significant.
Massive, isn't it?
That's around about 2 to 3 years of operational savings for the asset. So for us, it was really the combination of all of those three aspects coming together. And in the end, it was a very interesting intersection of both ingenuity in planning, ingenuity in construction, to create actually a really good financial outcome for our investors in the project.
Yeah, isn't that beautiful that all worked so well together? It might be one of the greenest buildings in Australia, if not the world, true?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it offers a new model for how we can do these sorts of complex engineering and building projects, whereby you don't have to demolish everything and start from scratch. I think that if we are going to get the overall emissions in the industry down, we have to do more with what we already have. And I think that this is a great example of being able to do that. We took a 45,000 square metre building from the 1970s, and we've transformed that into a 90,000 square metre building that is set for another 50 years.
That's amazing. Yeah, well done. A construction like this obviously has its challenges, and I feel like, Andrew, you might have felt some challenges along the way. True story?
Just a few.
Yeah. So what were some of those challenges?
You know, it took us 6 months to build the scaffold around the tower, which was at the time the world's largest scaffolding project in the Southern Hemisphere.
Unbelievable.
And it was the world's largest demolition project. So there was a lot of firsts for this project, not from just the design, but a delivery as well. And then whilst we're demolishing, we had to build from the bottom up and excavate the basement underneath the old building and managing safety and logistics as well. So the building was quite old. So we had to take care in what we were doing as well, so the building's wired up with a whole lot of technology and sensors to just allow us, from an hourly perspective, monitor so that we weren't doing any damage to it while we were facilitating the outcome. I think the collaboration with AMP Capital and the consultant team is just really, it's a true testament to delivering this project, you know, that in the scale it is and in the time frame that we did it. And so there's a real happy side for me, but there's also that sadness where I actually didn't want it to finish.
Yeah, you've loved it.
You know, I've loved the experience so much, and I've loved the challenge so much that it's been a big part of my life and obviously your life. 5 years working through it, and I know for the business, we've been involved with AMP Capital for over 10 years with it.
Yes.
So I think from a multiplex perspective, we're a bit sad that it's over, but you know, excited for the future and excited for, you know, doing more projects like this.
But to see how it's all come together and to see the attention and the focus that the team has really attacked every single problem and focused on it and executed on it amidst all the challenges is incredibly gratifying.
Yeah, must be. On the block next to Quay Quarter Tower, a character-filled new city neighbourhood has been created around the restoration of 18th century heritage buildings and cobblestone merchant laneways that support premium new residential apartments, shops, cafes, bars and restaurants. Quay Quarter Lanes is a wonderful pedestrian experience that connects the precinct to the cultural ribbon of Sydney and is a must-see destination for people visiting the city. Colleen, Quay Quarter Lanes are very special. What do you love about it?
I like the mixture of the old and new. and the diversity. We've got the heritage buildings, we've got all these fabulous new dining locations and lifestyle things, hairdressers, chocolate shops, the lot. It feels like it's been here a long time.
It does, yeah, I agree. Isn't that wonderful? Leanne, of course, we're in front of Hinchcliffe House. Why is it so special?
It's one of the oldest wool stores in Sydney.
Oh, I didn't realise.
And at 1,000 square metres, it's also our largest food and beverage operator here. And we thought whatever happens inside Hinchcliffe House, it sets the tone for the rest of the precinct and the experiences that you're going to have here.
Yeah, and it is beautiful inside and out the whole building. I've really enjoyed my time there. I also love the way this space connects the Indigenous heritage of the area as well as the European heritage. That was obviously intentional, Colleen.
Yes, Jonathan Jones is a Wiradjuri Kamilaroi artist, and he's done 5 elements of art that he's interspersed into the precinct, built into the built form, and it's all about bringing the memories of the life of Arabanu, who lived on this site at the time of Governor Phillip.
Yeah, how special. Colleen, I know that you're very passionate about art, and there's lots of beautiful art through this precinct. How have you utilised art for placemaking here?
Well, we've got 2 great pieces of public art with Jonathan's work here, and then the sculpture by Oliver Eliasson on the tower podium. It's called Roof for Stray Thoughts.
Beautiful.
Yeah, but we see ourselves as part of the cultural ribbon, and we see it as a great connector site for people who love art. All the culture seekers will come to the Art Gallery of New South Wales. They'll come here, they'll go across to the Museum of Contemporary Art and over to the Sydney Opera House and Sydney Living Museums. So we're kind of like a hub for cultural experience.
Green space and placemaking, how important has it been for you in this development?
Really important. We have over 1 acre of green space on the Quay Quarter tower with the podium, and then all the way up through the building we have these indoor-outdoor workspaces, barbecue areas or terraces for the employees, which is all about well-being, of course.
Yes. Leanne, tell me, of all the spaces here, do you have a favourite space? Are you allowed to have one favourite space?
I do have 2 favourites, if I can say 2 favourites. We're sitting in one of them. It is a heritage courtyard, funky music, best coffee, pastries, with the wool store around you. The other one is also an outdoor space, and it's our elevated rooftop garden.
And Colleen, your favourite space?
I love Lana in Hinchcliffe House. The pink marble, the flowers, the music, the Mediterranean cuisine. There's just something super special about that one.
Beautiful. Well, congratulations to you both. It's really beautiful.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you. Let's reflect on what's been achieved here at Quay Quarter. 90,000 square metres of premium grade space in one of the world's greenest office towers. A world first adaptive reuse that conserved over 12,000 tonnes of embodied carbon. An entire new mixed-use precinct encompassing 2 city blocks in Australia's showcase CBD location. The restoration of key heritage sites, 2 acres of new green spaces, new public laneways and character-filled retail experiences near Sydney's famous city waterfront. The fact that all of this was achieved on time and during a pandemic is an almost unimaginable accomplishment. Quay Quarter is a symbol of what's possible, an optimistic and capable response to the challenges of our time. What we see here is an opportunity to deliver a new way of construction and design that minimises environmental impact and maximises value for shareholders, at the same time delivering glorious new spaces for people to work and remember and celebrate what it means to be human. It's a place that everyone should see.